Hey everyone, welcome to week 15, day 4, Thursday. This is our ongoing 4-color earth palette week. Remember, we're using titanium white, yellow ochre, earth red, whichever one you want to pick out of the tons of options that you have on earth reds, and ivory black. So, Zorn color palette minus the saturation. That's it. Monday we did a painting of Tom Croft, wonderful painter. Tuesday, for Spanish Tuesdays, we painted Danny, very beautiful, as always. Yesterday, I painted my mom. I thought it was really nice. I thought it was just a painting that was an exercise on the sort of modulation between reds and greens and trying to find a way that kind of harmony that was created between the pass of one color to another can eventually sort of configure form. So it was very exciting to do. It was a very kind of simple painting, but also showcasing the really nice range of how much the redder mix of this palette can make the greener mix of this palette feel like beautiful complementary colors. So that was very nice. And again, the idea is to push possibilities in the palette. So let's see what we can do with the palette today. Okay, let's get started. For this fourth painting, I wanted to see if I could do something a little more naturalistic, but, and this is going to be the cool part, the painting I did of my mother yesterday that had those big relationships between this very earthy red and this greenish gray, it got my mind into a sort of abstract mode. And I think that this is the coolest thing about painting, that even though my heart leans towards a more naturalistic tendency, I really don't understand painting as a choice that we have of schools of thought that have been present throughout history. I really do think, and we live in a moment where we have this open choice, this ability to almost like browse all of these schools of thought, all of these painting philosophies that throughout history butted heads so many times. So many times. So, for example, Ingres and Delacroix, you were either an academic, you were either neoclassical, or you were either romantic and you were like a beast of a painter. But you couldn't really like both. It was a thing where you had to be either Raphael or Titian, especially late Titian. They were just two different sensibilities. And people always thought that they had to pick a side. They really had to lean towards one side or the other. And to be honest, this has been going on and it still goes on, which in my mind is just absolutely insane. That we choose to see painting in a dissected manner instead of looking at painting as this huge, super well-oiled machine that has withstood thousands of years. For thousands of years, our species has painted, and it has been our company. So to me, it's kind of ridiculous that we as painters at times have to think that we have to choose sides, that we have to stand on one side of the shore. I just don't understand that. And the reason I don't understand that is because I've always found energy and the necessary catalyst for my painting in places where I least expect it. This painting today, and I was mentioning how it is a painting that I'm going to be painting in a more naturalist manner. So I am going to be sensitive to how form turns, and I am going to be sensitive of where there's a cheekbone and where there's a nose, where there's a mouth, how the mouth turns. All those things that would interest just a traditional painter. But the core of this painting, and this is the coolest part, is actually something that reminded me of a Robert Motherwell. And Motherwell was an extraordinary painter. Him and Franz Kline in the 60s, 70s were doing some of the most powerful abstract expressionist work. And it is very strange because at that point, in the 60s, is where academic painting was being vilified. It was being demonized. So I remember this perfect quote of Salvador Dali, where he said in his diaries that maybe, I'm not saying he was right. I just grinned when I read this quote. He said that perhaps Picasso was not as good as people thought, and Bouguereau was not as bad as people thought. And it was great. It was just this tiny little moment of him being conscious that you had to like take a step back and realize, well, maybe this type of painting, this academic painting that came from turn of the century, maybe it's not as bad as we've thought all these years. Maybe there's something there, and maybe, Bouguereau is a hell of a painter. And it's kind of weird, but because even today, there's still people that promote the values that are behind a Bouguereau painting, let's call them that. The academic values, the discipline that is behind neoclassical and then academic painting. And they believe those values are at odds with painting that was done in the latter half of the 20th century. People still believe that the painting tendencies that we have today are still remnants of those painting philosophies from the 20th century, where, again, academy was being cast to the side and just treated as a lesser form of painting, almost like a dead form of painting. So there's figurative painting today that wants to really go against contemporary painting and the painting where all of this sort of animosity started from, which was painting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and, up until today. I really do think that being so dogmatic about painting is not in our best interest. So what I think it does is that it blinds us to possibilities. Because if you think about it, if you really, really think about it, there is something amazing about abstract expressionist painting. Because they were basically saying, I'm not going to paint things. I don't care about subject matter in the sense that, a ton of painting, even painting at the turn of the century, was caring about. I don't have to paint a thing. I have to paint how I feel about that thing. And when you start to try and grasp how to paint feelings, how to paint how you understand something, how to express something through paint, then you realize, well, if I am going to do that, I can't be bound by technique. Because if you really think about it, painting, traditional painting, and by traditional painting, I'm referring to the lessons that we've learned from High Renaissance to Mannerism, to Baroque, to Romanticism, to neoclassical painting, to academic painting, all these cornerstones of figurative, naturalist, realist painting. If you really think about it, those are bound by technique. Those are bound by what can you do with paint, but what can you do with paint in terms of paint being stable, in terms of you respecting how paint behaves and you understanding how it can be manipulated. And within those rules, you try to depict nature, right? But people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they realized, well, what if I don't care about that? What if I'm not bound to that because I don't want to do what they do? I clearly have no intention of painting anything that looks like that sort of painting. So why should I prime my canvases? Why should people tell me, yeah, you have to prepare a canvas? Well, no, I'm not going to prepare it. Well, you can't paint on raw canvas. Yes, I can. Leon Golub. Yes, you can paint on raw canvas, and it doesn't matter. And people go like, well, the fibers of your linen are going to soak all those metals and all that solvent, and it's going to rot, and then your painting won't really last forever. And people said, I don't care. Why would I care about that? Why would I even think of the things that are, again, the basis of traditional painting when I myself am trying to do something entirely different? So there was this liberation from all these rules and all these manners of constructing painting that these painters said, forget it. No, I don't care. And that is fantastic. The reason it is fantastic, it's not because it's the way people interpret it. Some people interpret it nowadays, which is like, well, that was offensive to our tradition. You were throwing away, you were spitting on, thousands of years of painting tradition. No, I choose to see it as, if we as human beings have decided to do this, let's just pay attention. Because maybe in the painting that these people are doing, we're going to see things that we have never conceived, that we never thought possible, because we were thinking within parameters, within very specific parameters. What they did was amazing. I'm remembering what my mother used to tell me when she was in art school, because she went to art school in the 70s. She was like, I could start a painting with oils, and if we ran out, I would just put acrylics on top. And if that ran out, we went to like a hardware store and bought the cheapest, whitest latex paint, and then we used that. And so, of course, there was a ton of wrinkling and cracking and just peeling off the paintings. But it was nice, and many times they were like interested in those effects, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is great." They would much rather sacrifice the stability of a painting in order to be able to access a manner in which you could react, in which you were closer to the way you felt about what you were painting. I find this fascinating, and for us to just turn a blind eye, for us to just decide, well, because you guys started saying that this type of painting was terrible and was horrible and it was dead, then nowadays it's payback. Now we're going to tell you guys you had no idea how to paint. You were an absolute disaster for painting. Now we're making a comeback, and now people that really know how to paint are once again in the driver's seat, and blah. It's like a pendulum. And I have no idea why it has to be that way. The way I choose to see it is just like, I'm just happily kind of navigating the history of painting. And I choose to stop wherever I want. And if I want to stop and look at a Whistler and just say, wow, this is absolutely incredible. And then if I want to choose and stop and see a Ruskin watercolor and say, wow, Ruskin, you weren't a bad watercolorist. This is very nice. And I can say, oh, I actually really like it. And I'm putting those two as examples because they hated each other. But I could do that. I'm not bound by anything. I don't care if they fought. I don't care if they had differing philosophies. I can actually understand them contextually because time has gone by and it has made me capable of understanding where, the two of them were coming from. And you could say, that about every single painter. So I can actually say the same thing Dali said about Picasso and Bouguereau. I personally think they were both geniuses. They were both absolute geniuses. But they were doing painting that was so different. And let's take a step back because people say like, well, Picasso did academic painting and he went past that at a very early point in his life. No. Picasso did some sort of academy-ish paintings, but he wasn't great at it. He wasn't at all great at it. He was capable of doing, I guess normal paintings. But my God, it's not like he was doing Fortuny and then he decided to do, cubist paintings. No. That was not the case. No, he was his own thing. Picasso was his own universe. But I can actually stand back and say, I love these two painters together. I absolutely do. And it's not like my brain is frying, telling me, no, you have to pick sides. You have to. Because I don't. It is my choice not to. It is my choice to enjoy painting, to enjoy everything that painting has to offer. Because why would I just say, well, I'm going to read from only these books and I'm going to teach myself the lessons from only these philosophies of paint, schools of thought, but not these? Why not? Why not just read all of them and see what you can get from them? I have no clue what putting Bouguereau and Picasso in a blender looks like. I don't know. Who knows? But that's going to be your choice. Like, you're going to decide what you put on your melting pot. And eventually all that stuff kind of distills into whatever your painting is going to be. That is your choice. I would never take away that choice from you. You can find inspiration wherever you want. And if it's the driving force behind you creating, really interesting, strong, amazing stories, and you can tell those stories through paint, that's awesome. Why would I ever dare to take that away from anyone? So, like I said, my mom's painting was a catalyst yesterday because I started thinking, well, this is a portrait and it is my mom. And of course, like I said yesterday, I can access a ton of things that are very personal to me when I do a painting of my mother, when I represent my mother. But it was also very evident that I was doing a complementary color painting, this earthy red against this grayish green. That was it. That's all the painting is about these two colors kind of coming together. And I thought, "Bah, this is Motherwell. Motherwell is just absolutely perfect for this exercise because he has these paintings, specifically the Elegy paintings. And there's one that it's called the Elegy to the Spanish Republic. And it has white, ochre, and black. And there was some pinkish hue underneath that ochre, but he covered it up with the ochre. And if you look at the painting, and I've seen the painting, you can actually see the pink sort of coming through. So it was perfect because that's all I'm painting today. I'm painting a dark mass with Julián's hair up top, and then a sort of pinkish mass, which is his portrait, and then this ochre band that's down the bottom, and like a bluish, kind of grayish light background. So to me, that was like, this is it. That's a palette. We're doing essentially the same painting. And you could argue, obviously, once you look at the Motherwell, it's like, no, dude, that's not the same painting. That's an entirely different painting. The notions that are behind the Motherwell painting are absolutely different from the ones that I'm doing when I'm constructing a portrait. But again, in my mind, it's like, no, well, you'd be surprised. There's so many things that they share that don't have to reside upon the fact that I am representing form. To me, that's the most obvious one. It's like, well, one is abstract shapes and rhythms, ovals and all these vertical rectangular shapes. And one is a portrait, a traditionally modeled portrait. How could they ever be the same thing? And again, I think they are very close. They actually meet somewhere in the universe because in my mind, one is actually feeding the other. So if it wasn't for that Motherwell painting, I wouldn't be aware of the strength that a really dark mass has in a composition. Him and Franz Klein, they did that for me. It's like when you want to put something down and you can put it with vehemency and with such commitment, then you can gain back so much strength from that painting that is unparalleled with anything else that we can do figuratively. That painting taught me those things, and I would have never considered putting that dark mass of hair up top if it wasn't for those paintings. I guess this is about understanding that there is so much value throughout history that it's so, I don't want to say dumb, but it is. But it's so limiting to just choose sides. It's almost as if the pendulum is swinging our way, like we all have to jump in because we're all going to do well because now galleries are going to show our work and we're going to sell our work and we're going to be famous and museums are going to buy our work and we're going to be validated because it is solely about those things. About the critical awareness validating us, about public collections buying our work, validating us, about museums exhibiting our work, validating us. And to be honest, I think when you're painting, you can't really be thinking about those things. Who cares about those things? You're supposed to be just looking at your painting and trying to translate whatever you've perceived and has moved you into paint. That should be all your worries. Everything else is just, weight, unnecessary weight. So to me, this was a perfect opportunity to remind myself that my doors are always open. My eyes are always open. My spirit is always open. It's like, I want to find happiness wherever I can spot it. And to me, there's paintings that move me and paintings that don't. That's about it. Years ago, I used to say, well, there's good painting and bad painting. But that sounds so binary, and that sounds like there's a level of objective judgment in there that I don't even want to go into discussing that. Nowadays, I'm like, you know what? If something moves me, then I like it. I'm interested. If something doesn't, then I can just say, well, it didn't do it for me. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to say it's horrible painting. I'm just going to say, no, it's not for me. And that's it. And I keep going. I keep moving until I find another little island where I can say, wow, this is incredible. So this was just a perfect painting to remind myself of that. Throughout history, painting is connected, and we can go through so much efforts to try and break those chains and put people up against each other. And the truth is, we shouldn't do that. Why waste our energy? It's all the same. It's one and the same thing. Painting is painting. It doesn't matter if you're doing a huge, black gesture on top of an ochre piece of color, or if you're constructing a nose. They're exactly the same. So that was it for today. I'm super happy with how Julián's portrait came out. I was going for a ton of character at the beginning. Then I had to walk it back a little bit because I thought, it was getting away from me a little bit. And I especially like the band of hair that's bleeding off the composition. So it's almost too big to be bound by the parameters of the image. And again, that's what painting is. It's way too big to be concerned about what we think is actually the way proper painting should be defined. No. Painting doesn't care about that. Painting will keep going. It is us that fight these petty fights, but painting is bigger than any of us. So, so that was it for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow for our last day of our 4-color earth palette. I ran out of Yupo. I ran out of synthetic sheets. So, so I'm going to be painting on linen. So that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow where we do our final painting. Thank you for hanging out. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.